All right. Tiffani, welcome to the All Things Sustainable podcast. I am so excited to have you on the show. I have been talking to you about this for a couple months and just like preparing this for everyone, but you are one of my dear friends and also just an incredible person to learn from. And so as we're talking about all things sustainable on this podcast, we are also going to include sustainable, like long-term, long-lasting change into the mix.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we're also going to tie that into the environment by talking about, cultivating sustainable change and managing feelings of overwhelm and anxiety within that change, especially when it comes to like handling eco anxiety. So I'm very excited to have you here. And I've told my listeners a little bit about you in the introduction, but I would love for you to share from your own perspective, like a little bit about who you are, what do you do, who are the beloved people in your life, and so on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I also am really excited for this conversation. My name is Tiffani Domokos, and I'm a therapist and a change strategist. I am really passionate about helping people get unstuck and creating lasting change, really that brings more joy, more love, more peace to their lives. I currently have a coaching business. I've been a therapist for almost 15 years now. And I'm kind of melding those two in my coaching to support people. I live in Centennial, Colorado, and I am married to a very, very kind and generous man who is also a teacher. And we have a 3.5-year-old daughter who we love to go on adventures with and teach about the world.
Mm, I love that. Your daughter is so sweet. She's a year older than my son. And it's
Yes.
amazing to always see the difference even just 1 year can make. Like her level of independence and personality coming through is just so fun.
Yeah, she is pretty fun.
Oh, that's great. Tell us a little bit about what got you interested in change coaching in particular, because like you mentioned, you were a therapist for so many years. But what about this realm of change drew you in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to expand my influence. So therapy is wonderful and I love it. And I love all my friends who do therapy and who continue to do therapy. I was finding a lot of trends in the ways that I was supporting people as a therapist. And I really just wanted to expand that outside of therapy to be able to do more, online coaching, online courses. So I got my certification in change management in, gosh, that was February 2021. And I really loved the structure of it. So, change management, there is a very specific process that people kind of go through to experience change. And it really resonated with me as a therapist yes, I had seen that. I had seen that structure in just kind of the natural order of how people change and how people grow. And so I just was really excited to marry that with my therapy experience. And yeah, like I said, just kind of help more people tackle those spaces where they're really stuck and feeling like they can't get out of what if it's a mindset or a habit or um, maybe a consistent trigger that comes up for them. Um, that there are some specific tools that we can put in place that kind of get at the root of what's going on and then can move them through that process of change.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's so unique because it is very connected to therapy, but it's its own beast to tackle. And I
Yeah.
know you had put on like a 6 or 8 week parenting workshop for a while
Yeah.
back, and I was able to take part in that, and it was so amazing to go through the sessions with you and the group of people because it definitely felt like therapy sessions in a way, the way you had structured it, but we were so focused on like change within our own parenting styles, so much of that inner child work that has to be done that, if you are parenting, like so much of what you're doing is just parenting yourself and then reaching your child's needs where they are. And I really loved that. But so much of what we're going to talk about today could be applied to any part of our lives.
Yeah,
so
that's
listeners, right. I'm excited because so much of what Tiffani has to share is applicable, not just in, the realm of like environmental focus, but in this little 3-part mini series, we are going to specifically connect sustainable change to an eco-friendly lifestyle as well. So first, let's talk about how true change, long-lasting change happens. And when we were planning this mini series, Tiffani, you had written to me something that I thought was so beautifully worded. So I wanted to read that if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. You had said, once you learn about the state of our planet, you have to take action that aligns with your beliefs about the state of the planet or choose to go into denial. This creates a disconnect within yourself. But when we can take actions that feel empowering and align with our values and beliefs, we are living with integrity. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about how awareness, action, disconnect, integrity, alignment, all of those things that you named, what does all of that have to do with cultivating sustainable change?
Yeah, I think they all, for me, go hand in hand. So, specifically, integrity and alignment. I really see us as humans with these 3 main parts. So, body, mind, and spirit. And the things that we do in each of those areas influence the others. So the body is, the physical realm, kind of the like things that we can like touch and feel and see and smell. The mind is our thoughts and feelings, and the spirit or soul, whatever you believe, for me is really our connection to something bigger than ourselves. You can call it God or the universe or the earth, but it's really our human need and desire to be connected to each other, to leave a legacy behind, and really to bring more like goodness and healing to the world. So when we think about those things and we keep those in mind, when we look at our beliefs and essentially what we think about ourselves, what we think about the world, about the future, our ability to impact the world, our ability to impact our future, right? All of those just kind of meld on top of each other. And once we become aware of our impact on the planet, on our relationships, on other people, right, then we have some power to do something, to take action and change it or let it be the same. When we come into the awareness that we have the ability to change the future of our planet, I think it should go without saying, maybe it doesn't, that we need to take some action, that we need to do something with that information, or we kind of have to live disconnected from ourselves and from that part of us that is really compelled to bring that goodness, to bring that healing into the world, and to be connected to that legacy that we're leaving behind.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we don't, there is this disconnect, right? We kind of become stagnant. We might, I mean, I think I see a lot of people who don't take action when they know they can. That brings up a lot of, continued anxiety and stagnation. And if I'm not taking action in this one area, it's really hard to do that in other areas, right? But when we take that action, it aligns us with our beliefs. Our actions are in line with who we want to be. And that alignment automatically brings about more joy, more peace, right? We know we're contributing something positive, and that will have a kind of impact back on us and our experience of ourselves and the world.
Mm-hmm. That definitely resonates with me. I think I have been living that out so much in the past handful of years or more. Just kind of, growing into myself and finding out more about, who I am at my core and what matters to me and trying to align my life with all of those things.
Yeah.
But, it makes me think of the saying that ignorance is bliss, but I feel like there's something missing, and I don't know what the words are, but it's something like ignorance is bliss, and there's a much deeper sense of fulfillment maybe within life
Yeah.
beyond bliss, like that comes with the awareness. Because yeah, I may have been blissfully ignorant, all of the things that I just didn't know before, and I was living my life and not realizing maybe what kind of impact I was having on the planet through all of my, choices as a consumer or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it was blissful to a degree because I didn't really have to think about much. But then as
Mm-hmm.
soon as these light bulbs started turning on and I did have the awareness piece that you're talking about, um, I couldn't unlearn what I had learned, and I couldn't unsee the things I had seen or heard through all my research. And I think that, like, yeah, maybe the blissful ignorance was gone, but the more I aligned my life with what was really important to me based on what I had learned, I felt a
Mm-hmm.
much deeper sense of fulfillment. And then I think my life since then has felt much more like authentic and meaningful, at least to me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really makes sense. I also think that there is this mentality, especially in kind of our older generation, that they're not going to be around to feel the effects, so why bother? And I think you and I both agree that's pretty short-sighted, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the responsibility that we are impacting future generations, not just our children, but our children's children and our children's grandchildren and great grandchildren, right? Like all of this starts with us, and it started with our grandparents and our great grandparents, who maybe a lot of them didn't have the resources that we have. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have the access to the information, or they didn't understand, there wasn't research about how we were impacting the planet. And so now that we are in this generation where we have that information, we have the access to that information. And I think the question is, what are we going to do with it? And how
Mm-hmm.
do we not, take the whole world on, but really look at our piece of the world, and how do we bring more healing? How do we make more sustainable change in our corner of the world? And knowing that even that little tiny grain of sand that we might be offering to the planet, it is actually meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It is so hard to not feel the weight of the world on your shoulders sometimes, especially when it
Mhm.
comes with such big topics like climate change,
Yeah.
and the feeling of like needing to save the earth. I don't even really like that phrase very much, even though I use it all the time because it's familiar to people.
Right.
But I don't really like it because it does seem to put the responsibility all on one person's shoulders or one group of people's shoulders. Um, I think that it can either make people feel very overwhelmed and shut down and do nothing,
Hmm.
or it could make people feel like, well, that's just impossible. So now they're going to be defensive of the choices that they've been making and really like dig their heels in further. I think it just brings up a bunch of negative emotions within people.
Hmm.
So I am trying to be more considerate of the language that I'm using too, and
Hmm.
trying to meet people where they're at. But I know that you've talked about how change is hard for people, and there are tangible steps that you can take to change your own habits and even to get your loved ones on board. Because with you making specific changes, it's kind of like a model of what change can look like for them.
Hmm.
So, could you share some examples of what that might look like?
Yeah. So, hearing you talk, I think about that overwhelm leading to kind of a paralysis, right? We're so overwhelmed that we just can't do anything. And so we just keep doing the things that we're doing, even though we know it's not in alignment with what we want to be doing or being. And so this is where, for me, the change model that I was trained on was really helpful, because it gives some specific sort of phases of the change process to identify both for myself, but also the people I'm working with or loved ones that I'm trying to kind of help along in the process. And so I use the model, the ProSci model called ADKAR. So it's an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And so at any point in the process of change, we or, a loved one or someone we're working with might get stuck in one of those phases of change and need to address that particular area. So for example, if someone, you know, doesn't even know about what climate change is or how their current actions are impacting climate change, they might lack some awareness. And so the way to address that is to provide education that is compelling to them, right? And that last part is really, really key because that leads
Mm-hmm.
into their desire. And we really want to tap into people's desires for change. So, what is compelling to me is going to be really different than what might be compelling to you or to my husband or my neighbor or my family members. And so it's addressing the specific sort of stage that they're in and that we're in and identifying what is the thing that's sort of keeping them stuck in that stage and how can we sort of partner and come alongside them to help them move into the next phase of the change towards eventually, having the knowledge and the ability and the follow through to enact that change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was that acronym again? It was ADKAR, so ADKAR.
Yes. So it's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So
Reinforcement.
so awareness is really, do they know that a change needs to happen? Desire is, do they have any interest in changing? Knowledge is, do they have the information about how to change? Ability is, do they have the skills to take action on the awareness, desire, and knowledge they have? And then the reinforcement, that is just, you know, doing the things to maintain that change over time.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably the key to what's the word? Keeping burnout at bay. Don't
Yeah,
you think? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And we can talk about this too, but not taking on too much is a big thing with change process and change management. We want to make each of these steps really manageable for people so that it's a really easy bar to jump over. It's not hard. It's right, like low bar. But I think for any habits that you're changing or adding, that like low bar puts like a dopamine hit every time you do it. It's like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
did it, right? Even though it may seem something really small and simple, it's really important for like our bodies and brains to get that feedback loop um, that is positive, especially when we're talking about big systemic change, because our little actions build up and make an ocean of action. But we have to believe it and we have to keep doing it in order to be part of the ocean.
Mm. I love that. Okay, there's so much here that I want to unpack with you. And I know we're going to spend a little bit on like the individual side of things and the systemic
Yeah.
side of things. So let's talk about individual levels of change first, kind of using this ADKAR change model that you've
Yeah.
outlined for us. So, what are some, examples? Maybe we could walk through a few more examples of what this looks like for other people. We kind of covered that first step of what awareness might look like for some.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's dig into that a bit and then maybe share some tangible like steps and strategies for people who want to embrace that change and create these new habits that align with their values and beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So awareness and desire are usually the two biggest hurdles. So once someone is aware and they have the desire to change, most people will take that action. We talked a little bit about that kind of freeze response, the paralysis. But just the way that humans are made, right? We want to respond to our internal voices and desires. So once the desire is there, it's really just training and then that reinforcement over time. So my advice is always to start really small. So if I'm talking about change in my own life, right, we have been going through a process of um, trying to cut down on the plastic that we buy, right? Whether that's our food that we buy things in, or um, containers or toys for my daughter or whatever that might be. Um, I probably could have tornadoed through our house and thrown all of the plastic out. Um, I probably wouldn't have been able to sustain that, right? Because my brain is not conditioned to do that yet. And so we decided to pick like, hey, we're just going to look at our groceries and what we're buying, the quality that we're buying it in, what is the food source, where is this coming from, and really looking at just that one thing, right? And we do that for several weeks, like 3 to 6 weeks or a couple of months. And then we're ready. Okay, we're in a habit now of paying attention to this and buying different things. And so now we can add something on top of that. And right, so then we start looking at toys. Okay, gosh, we have been so blessed to be gifted so many things. What if this actually makes sense? And what if it is like clutter? And what can we give away to people that don't have what we have? And how can we be simple in our gifting to our daughter, and ask our family to be simple in the gifting to our daughter, and be really strategic about what we allow kind of to come into our home. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for, but essentially, right, we want to start small, pick one thing, like literally one thing. I know that it's easy to be like, I'm going to start with 5 things, or even I'm going to start with 3 things. It just, our brains get really overwhelmed because the rest of our life is happening on top of this change. And so unless you have the luxury of really like pausing your whole life to do this, which maybe someone does. I did not have that luxury. I don't have that luxury. And so breaking it into those bite-sized pieces where you pick one thing, you do that consistently for a while, 3 to 6 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks, right? Then it becomes a habit. Your brain just gets trained. Our brains are, sorry, I'm just going to go with it.
No, I love it. Please keep going.
Our brains are right, they're just like an organ of connections. And so when you have not been paying attention to these things for 25, 35, 45 years, right? Then your brain doesn't know how to pay attention to that. We have to train it to do that. And so by paying attention to just that one thing, we can do that. We train our brain to pay attention to it, to respond to even some of the like overwhelm and anxiety that comes up with some positive messages of, this is the thing that I'm doing to meet this end goal. And this is just the first thing that I'm doing, right? This isn't the last thing. It's not the only thing that I'll do. This is the first thing, because our lives, the time passes. It's what we're doing, the small things that we're doing in our lives that lead up to and build up to the big things mattering in the end.
Mm. Yeah. So you're setting a solid foundation with a few weeks at a time in order to create habits that just become second nature to somebody, so that they don't have to put in so much effort as times go on. Like if our brains, like you're talking about, if you are kind of blazing a new path of connections within your brain,
Yes.
eventually that's going to become a well-worn path, and it's not
Right.
as challenging to keep it going.
Yep, that's exactly right. It just makes it makes it easier to continue that reinforcement. And especially if there's positive reinforcement in that process, right? So if you're saying, gosh, I'm doing this because I'm helping the planet, I'm doing this to help the planet, right? And that is part of that kind of conditioning that you're doing that's attached to this particular action that you're taking. We see in change management more positive results, right? So if we're connecting these small actions to the bigger goal, the bigger outcome, then it's more sustainable because we naturally want to be connected to something positive on a larger scale. And so we are naturally connecting ourselves to that end outcome, even if it's just one small thing for 6 weeks that we're starting right with.
Mm-hmm. And so many people feel like that one small thing couldn't possibly make a big difference, first of all, right? Like so many people feel like their actions don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Is it really worth my time to even focus on this one small thing for so many weeks? But like we've seen time and time again on a global level, it takes all of these individuals, billions of individuals who are making small choices in their life, but then collectively that's what's created the state of the planet that we're in today. So, who are we to think that we can't take control of that and change the state of the planet that we're in today through all of these collective small actions?
That's right.
And something else that I love to tell my clients is that if sustainable living isn't actually sustainable for you, meaning it can't be maintained. Yeah. It's not like we were just talking about. It's not something that you can continue doing habitually and become second nature. Then you are just going to be burnt out or frustrated or what have you. So living sustainably is not like a one size fits all type of model. It's going to look different from person to person. So that it can become sustainable long term for you. And like that's okay if we all look different from one another. The bigger picture is that we're all trying our best and doing what we can.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yes to all of that. Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, so let me think through the next question I want to ask you. Okay. I'm going to go into like part of the third question. Let's see. So how do you recommend people navigate the overwhelming amount of information that is available to them? Because like you referenced earlier, previous generations didn't have all of this information. They didn't have all the technology or the access to what we have today. So this can be a blessing and a curse. It is it is incredibly resourceful what we have today, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. And many people, if they're learning about environmental sustainability, social justice, and climate justice issues, and so on, how do you recommend people navigate that overwhelming amount of information?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, Katie. I think obviously it's different for everyone, but I'm a big believer that if we are caring for ourselves, if we are showing compassion to ourselves, that it's much easier to do that for and with other people. So I would be curious, what do you do when you are overwhelmed? What are some of the things that you do, like just in daily life, whether it's about this or about something else? What is something that helps with the overwhelm?
Oh boy, this is something that I feel like I've only just started to pay attention to in the past year. And a lot of it has been connected to what I've learned about myself through the Enneagram. And you and some other friends have been so influential in that, actually. So I've been so thankful for it. And connecting that to something you shared at the very beginning of our time together about our body, mind, and soul. So all that to say, I've been trying really hard for the past year to actively tune into my body because I think it's easier, being the Enneagram type that I am, to tune into my mind. My mind is always running. I have so many
Mm-hmm.
thoughts in my head all the time, and I'm very
Mm-hmm.
aware of that. Um, and tuning into my, soul or spirit or heart, like that comes pretty naturally for me. But being in tune with my body is much harder. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've been trying to teach myself like coping mechanisms or skills to notice, where do I
Mm-hmm.
feel something in my body when I'm overwhelmed? Like recognizing, does that, feel like tight across my shoulders? Like, is my back
Mm-hmm.
hurting? Is my stomach hurting? Like, there's all the different ways that it can manifest. So becoming aware of that, for one, in my body has been a big deal. And then doing something that meets that need of my body. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm feeling incredibly tense and overwhelmed and I feel that in my back, then, going and stretching for a little bit, taking the time to do
Mm-hmm.
that is super helpful. Sometimes I just need to like remind myself to breathe. And if I'm in a space where I can do it, I will go and purposefully sit and breathe
Mm-hmm.
deeply. And, different breathing strategies that I've learned over the past year will help.
Love that.
Um, I've learned more about tapping, and some of that was in your parenting workshop that you offered,
Mm-hmm.
with like tapping certain points of my body. But that's, for me, how I've been trying to handle feelings of overwhelm recently.
Yeah, I think I love all of that. You hit on all the points that I was going to make. So I love that. I'm just going to use that as a jumping off point. So yeah, I think the ways that we manage overwhelm in our regular lives, like all of this is integrated, right? All of this work that we're talking about, whether it's working on climate change, or whether it's having a more sustainable lifestyle, or it's just like managing how to be a parent, or how to be a partner, or how to be a good friend or a neighbor or daughter or sister, right? All of those areas of our lives are integrated, and we try to like section them out, right? Like, I'm feeling this way about this thing over here, but our bodies don't know how to do that. Our bodies are very integrated, and our bodies take that and hold it. Until we're ready to release it, or until we choose to release it.
Hmm.
And so that's what I do in my work too, is starting with the body, right? Like, what is the body telling us? Are there autoimmune issues? Are there immune issues where you're getting sick a lot? Those are all signs of getting burnt out, getting run down, right? Are you not sleeping? Some of those like basic, are you not eating well? Do you not have an appetite, right? Those are like basic human body functions that are not happening, are an indicator to us that, hey, something's going on, whether it's a body thing, something in our mind, something in our emotions. And we need to address that. And so I love that you are in a practice of remembering your body, because I think it really does. It starts there. It starts
Mhm.
with, what is our body telling us?
Mhm.
And I'm also more of the Enneagram heart type, right? So paying attention to my feelings is much easier for me than it is to get into my body, or to even like listen to my logical mind and what my mind is saying. But the body is a really great base, like home base of where to come back to when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And so I would ask, people, how do you manage overwhelm in other parts of your life? Maybe you're not managing it, right? And if that's the case, then are there people that you know who do manage it really well, that you can kind of emulate or learn from or ask questions to? Um, I think any change requires some sort of connection and community. I don't think that we can do this work, or really any work of change, by ourselves. It's not impossible. It's just really hard. We
Mhm.
were we were made for community. Humans were made for connection. Um, in my class, we talked about co-regulation, and that idea of kind of borrowing someone else's nervous system to calm our own nervous system.
Mm.
And that need does not go away when we become adults. It's why we look for partnerships. It's why we create families. Like that need for connection and comfort and camaraderie does not go away when we're no longer a child, even though it's mostly spoken about in reference to parents with their children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I encourage people, get a coach, find a buddy who's doing the same things that you're doing, who believes the same things that you're believing. Community is just so, so, so important when we're walking through change.
Mm-hmm.
I think also going the slow route can help with that overwhelm. It can take the need to do everything off the table, can help with that overwhelm feeling. I think it was you that put a quote in, maybe you put it in all of your emails, but in at least one of your emails where you said, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean that you can't do something, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
is the something? And then be really confident about that. Be really confident about that something, that something is contributing to the everything that is happening. We
Mm-hmm.
can't change the world all at once. It does take time, and it takes a lot of time. And so we need the skills, we need the connection, we need the community to sustain ourselves over the course of our lifetime, if that's, what we're working towards. Um, and then I think lastly, really recognizing when you are stuck and not letting yourself kind of stay there. So finding the help that you need, whether that is through a coach or a community of some kind. Maybe you need to take a break. For me, managing overwhelm often means like getting off my phone, getting away from information, getting away from any kind of comparison that my brain might do, and getting with my people and getting into nature. Nature
Mm-hmm.
is such a natural, like anti-anxiety and antidepressant.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is very underrated. So, getting into a natural environment, getting away from screens, taking a break from doing the research and hearing the reports. And, that is okay. That is all part of this sustainable thing that we're trying to build here, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this brings us full circle back to what we were talking about in the beginning, that, the more you cannot be blissfully ignorant anymore. Okay, so you have the awareness piece with all the information that you brought into your life, or that you've been given, and all the research done. And it does serve its purpose for that season. But if you were to only stay there, if you were to get, like you said, stuck in the awareness section of the
Yeah.
change model, like the or the ADKAR, if you get stuck in awareness, then you can actually really overwhelm yourself with too much information and make
Yes.
yourself feel like you can't handle all of this.
Mhm.
So it serves its purpose, but yeah, you need to be in tune with your body to recognize, like, when has that season changed, and you can
Mhm.
continue taking new steps, taking new actions to live a life that is aligned with what you value and what you've learned,
Mhm.
and needing to take a break, needing to rest, or not even take a break from the actions that you are building into new habits, but
Yeah.
just like, you don't need so much information about those actions anymore. Like, what you need to know. So turn off the news for a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. And let yourself do the things that you have committed to without that overwhelm, because it does get really demotivating when the actions that you're doing to try to change are sort of coupled with this overwhelm. Like, our brain doesn't want to be in that space. It wants to
Mhm.
feel good, and it wants us to feel good. And um, so that can help too with, again, going back to the, coupling that one action with kind of a bigger picture perspective. And so for some people, it's like going to a rally, or, finding some inspiration of how like small things leading up to a big change have actually made an impact, and that is inspiring to them to keep doing this little thing. But everybody's different. Everybody's body brain network is different. Everybody has a desire for change for a different reason. Even sometimes, like, I know in my family, sometimes the motivation is cost, right? We want to lower the costs of things. And actually, sustainable living is very cost effective
Yes.
in a lot of ways, not everything, but in a lot of ways. And so, appealing to that in ourselves, that those little pieces too can be motivating to us when we're seeing all of the benefits, not just looking for, like, is this changing the planet, but like, how is this changing my world? How is this making my family healthier? How is this making me more aligned with my values and the things that I care about?
Yep. And there's that reinforcement piece of your change
That's
model.
right.
Like, that is what the end of the acronym stands for. And I can see why that's something that you have to come back to and hit that point over and over, because, you do get satisfaction, or at least many of us do, by, you have something on your to-do list and you cross it off. Like, that alone can give you a great hit of dopamine.
That's right.
And motivate you to continue to work on your to-do list. Like, that's great. And you could have other reinforcing factors. Like you said, there's the health of your family and your community and the planet. There's the cost savings. There's, healthier living maybe for you if you are lowering your carbon footprint by walking or biking more often than you drive,
Right.
or you're eating differently. Like, there's so many reinforcing factors that can continue to help you drive sustainable change forward while you're navigating burnout and overwhelming information. So there's so much that can benefit our individual lives working towards sustainable change. Let's talk about the other piece that you shared, though, the fact that we can't really do this alone, at least not in a way that is sustainable long term. It's going to be way harder to try and go it alone.
Yeah.
So we need community. We need even just one other person in our, in our court. So that also is a big, big driver of systemic change. So we've talked about individual change. Let's talk about systemic change. It can be hard. We often need the coping skills, like we've talked about, to ward off depression or eco-anxiety, trying to live with joy in the midst of all of this change. So I want to dive into like some practical tools and techniques that people could use to manage, like, I'm trying to think through how I want to word this actually. I think I'm going to go back and restart that sentence.
Well, so can we talk a little bit about community and building community?
Yep, let's do that.
So I think, I don't know about you, but I have found it very difficult in adult life to build community with people who have similar values, right? Everybody's kind of, and everything's a hot topic. Everything is, has a differing opinion, and finding people that we have that commonality with, can be really hard. I think when it comes to things like this type of sustainable change, people can often feel like, we're judging them if they're not doing the same things as we are, or we think that they're wrong for doing the things that they are doing, or that we're going to force them to believe something that they don't want to, and then they dig their heels in. And it comes down to, honestly, some people will just never change. They don't want to, for whatever reason. And we can keep doing that, and telling them the things and saying the things that are important to us, and they just don't have the resources to be able to change their minds about that. And so ultimately, right, we can only control what we do or what I do, right? I can only control what I do. I can't control even what my spouse does or what my child does, right? All I can do is my part. But I think we also can create some compelling arguments, for lack of a better word, when we're talking about building that community, right? So are there people in your life who could get on board with some of the benefits of this kind of eco change, whether that's cost, whether that's supporting local businesses, or gardening more, or right, whatever that might look like. Are there things that are compelling to you that that is also compelling to other people? And so can you kind of use that information to connect, like, right, that connection is what is really important in the building of community. So to connect over that thing, and then invite them to, hey, would you like to hear about some other ways that you can save money? Hey, do you want to hear about some other ways that we could, not buy as many groceries because we're gardening? Those kinds of things that can build a community around kind of a specific value that might, where if you're bumping up against those sort of mentalities of political bias with the language of eco-friendly, saving the earth, right? Those kinds of things. Is there another avenue where that political part is kind of set aside, and doesn't create so many hackles, and you can connect over these other values that you do share in common, and build from there?
That makes so much sense to me. I've grown up with so many different circles of people in my life, and I continue to maintain connections with so many people in my life that are from a whole variety of political beliefs and religious beliefs and so on, and life experiences and ages and all of that. So that, leaning into our mutual connection point, a mutual value that we both respect and share, that has been huge for maintaining these connections and helping people toward sustainable change, for both the benefit of their own lives and for the planet. So everything you just shared makes so much sense to me.
Love it.
I don't know why I'm getting stuck here on this last part. I'm trying to figure out how to start to bring this in for a landing. I think we've talked a lot about the eco anxiety and the feeling of overwhelm.
So
maybe we'll land on. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can break it down into body, mind, soul kinds of things if you want me to.
I'd
as
love
far
that.
as some more practical tools.
Maybe that would be kind of where we were headed with question 6, right before that final question for you. Okay. Thanks for helping me think that through.
Yeah, of course. Do you want me to just jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll start to, I'll reword this. Okay, we're going to start bringing this conversation in for a landing. So when it comes to systemic change and all of these communities made up of individuals that are doing their best and influencing each other, like we've talked about, what are some effective strategies and tools for these individuals and communities to feel empowered and to really start making a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a big believer that when we, like I said earlier, when we're caring for ourselves, it is so much easier to do the changes that we want to see. It's easier to care for other people when we feel like our needs have been met. So I often start with that, right? How are you caring for your mind, body, and soul? How are those three areas of your life healthy, and where do they need extra support? So when we get depleted in one or more of those areas, we really want to make sure that we're taking the time to attend to those felt needs. And so that might also mean supporting someone else who is trying to attend to those felt needs, right? So if you're a partner and your partner is the default parent, they might need some more support for attending to these needs. Same with neighbors or community members, right? How can we kind of work together to make sure that all of us collectively are getting our needs met so that we can continue this work that we're doing? So like I've said before, right? I split up the kind of human experience into body, mind, and soul or spirit. Um, and so some tangible steps for body. It's nothing mind-blowing or earth-shattering, right? It's all the things that you hear from your doctor. So regular exercise, nutritious food. And what I mean by that is lots of different colors. My family jokes about, the toddler beige diet. Don't eat like a toddler. Eat lots of colors, right? Very colorful foods. They all have different nutrients in the foods. Each color is a different type of nutrient. I'm just learning about this, but I'm really excited about it and seeing some really significant change in myself and my family around that. The other thing for our body is, like I've mentioned before, the time in nature. And then the last one that I focus on is feeling positive feelings in our bodies. And I know that might sound kind of strange because don't we feel everything in our bodies? But we really don't. We don't always take the time to feel positivity in our body, like to feel joy, to literally take time every day and think about the things that brought us joy today, and then find it in our body. Let our body like feel that joy and just sit in that. It has positive health outcomes for caring for our body. And again, the whole goal, right, in this conversation is creating that sustainable change.
Mm-hmm.
So then for our mind, and this is our thoughts and our feelings is kind of what I put into the mind. Um, the things that I recommend are meditation, again, time in nature, time with loved ones, going back to that kind of co-regulation and being connected to other people. And hopefully those loved ones are safe people who have healthy nervous systems, who you can, connect to and feel calm with and have fun with. But that's another one is play. Play is really important. Play is really important with our kids, but it's also important with our partners and our friends. That connection is so important for emotion regulation, for mental health. Yeah, just really, I could probably talk like a whole nother hour on just the benefits of play and doing fun things with the people that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other things that come up for me when I think about kind of mental health or emotional health is, and especially around change, is letting go of perfectionism and our limiting beliefs. So perfectionism really is that belief that like I should be perfect all the time. I should get it right every single time. That is not human. That is not real. That no one is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so being okay with not getting it right every single time, knowing that the like the bar is not that high, you can lower the bar to make it sustainable for you. Um, I think is really important in this process of change. Change requires failure. It requires us to not get it right so that we know how to adjust and shift um, to make it more sustainable for us and for our families.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the last one is soul care. And that again, the nature, you'll see a common theme for me. Nature is a big component of care for our whole selves, and it impacts all the pieces of who we are. So that's a big one. I think being connected to and remembering our values and beliefs about who we are, how we are connected to the bigger mosaic of life on our planet, and as we were designed to be connected. And then whatever else, comes up for someone around soul that might be connected to their religious beliefs or, their other spiritual beliefs outside of religion. Again, just not ignoring that part of who we are as a part of this change process, I think is really important in creating that sustainable change over time.
Mm-hmm. I love all of that. I mean, we should have you back on the show sometime to like spend so much longer going into each of those components. I love it so much. But really imagine, like, I have to reemphasize this for any listeners who might be still questioning, like, okay, this all sounds nice, but how does that actually have to do with systemic change? Or does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? And I mean, to that, I would just say, like, really imagine if all of us, or at least if a really big majority of us, were focused on the pieces that you just described, focusing on our body, mind, spirit, and soul. If we were intentionally focused on that and actively doing work to feed those components day in and day out, even if we had to take a break sometimes, like that, I just think our world would be in a much different state. And I
Mm,
think that that also pushes for the other things that matter and that drive systemic change, like, policy change, or big corporations that
mhm,
are also responsible for doing their best,
mhm.
for the planet. All of these things, individuals are the ones that ultimately influence all of that change, because
Yeah.
we're the ones who are voting, or we're the ones who
Mhm.
are, the consumers that support specific corporations with our
Yeah,
dollars. Like,
that's right.
we're influencing each other. Someone else on a different podcast episode earlier, I think in season 3, I want to say it was Colleen Patrick Gaudreau, but she was talking about how we have so much more influence in our communities and our neighborhoods than, celebrities do, for example, that we put often on a pedestal. But
Mm,
we are most likely going to change our own lives and actions and habits based on somebody that we know who is
mhm.
helping to motivate us or encourage us or bring that awareness that we didn't have before. We're
Yeah,
most likely going to change because of someone we know, not because of some celebrity or somebody else that we don't know.
yeah,
So just really like thinking through all of this for myself and reflecting on everything that you've shared today, I think if we were to focus on feeding our body, mind, and spirit, we would all be in such a different space.
yeah. I could not agree more, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think when we are working on ourselves and we are aligned with ourselves, it is compelling to other people to do the same.
Hmm. Yeah. And speaking of that, I would love for you to share with everyone, just because I'm so excited about what you do and what you have to offer. Could you tell us before we wrap up today more about your approach to coaching and how you help clients to make meaningful, long-lasting changes in their lives? And what have you got going on right now with Holy Living Coaching? How could people get into touch with you?
Yeah. Well, you can always find me on Instagram. I am doing my best to show up there. I love that community, but I'm at Tiff Holy Living, and that's Tiff with one F and Holy with a WHO instead of a HO.
Mhm.
And my coaching right now, so I'm doing some individual coaching, and what that looks like is we have sort of 5 to 10 sessions, and we identify a very specific item that someone wants to address. So maybe they're stuck in their parenting and a habit in their parenting, or maybe they're stuck with their spouse or their work or their career or whatever that might be. And then identifying these very small strategies that they can practice for up to 3 weeks, and that we measure kind of where they are now and then where they are at the end of that. And then they can decide kind of what their next steps are, if they want to continue or practice that for a while and come back. So I'm really just kind of setting the foundation and the groundwork. But it's really fun work. We get into a lot of, those limiting beliefs and perfectionism and the shoulds in our lives, right? Things that everyone thinks that they should be doing, but no one's actually keeping track of those things. And so really helping people to kind of live more fully into who they are, who they were made to be, to love that, love who they are and who they were made to be, and to be able to offer that to the world.
I love that. That sounds like so much fun. I know personally that the workshop that I did with you for a few weeks was really, really fun. And I think if you're going to find support in cultivating sustainable change in your lives, like doing it with a group of people and a coach
Mhm.
specifically who can give you the tools that are really hard for you to come up with on your own,
Yeah.
or like just the fact that it saves so much time because you have so much to present people that they could, try to go into the research rabbit hole, but it can just be so overwhelming not knowing what to
Mm-hmm.
look for.
Mm-hmm.
So, doing this work with a coach and with a group of people who are all like in it together, you're in the work together. I
Yep.
think that's so much more fun and so much more motivating.
And I think it's really helpful for people to have an outsider's perspective on what is keeping them stuck, right? Sometimes that's where we can't see the forest for the trees in our daily lives. And so
Mhm.
having a third party to kind of look in and say, like, gosh, yeah, you seem to be stuck on this belief that you should be something or you should be doing something, right? Or you're stuck in this loop of inaction. What's keeping you stuck? Let's kind of break it down. And we probably could do that for ourselves, if we have that skill set. But even as a therapist, sometimes that's hard for me to do for myself. And so I've been so happy to just kind of walk people through, like, let's break things down into smaller pieces so that, again, you're not so overwhelmed, right? I'm here to partner with you. So,
Mm,
um, to that end, I also have a newsletter, which I think we'll put in your show notes,
mhm.
that people can sign up for. It is a monthly newsletter that gives a kind of short overview of one topic, and then some updates on kind of what's going on in my world, and then one change habit or tip or trick that people can use throughout the month to create change for themselves. So that's kind of I call it coaching light. The
Mhm.
newsletter is it's a pretty easy read. It's really quick and really tangible steps to take on meeting your goals.
Mhm. We will absolutely put that in the show notes. I always look forward to reading your newsletters when they come into my inbox, and we'll have that in the show notes. We'll have, your basic contact info and your Instagram, and then any resources we had kind of mentioned during the episode too. I like to go back through and listen and then link
Sure.
that in, like the Enneagram, for example. I might just put in like the link to the Enneagram Institute, but if
Oh
you have
yeah.
any other future resources you think of too, we can put those in there. And so anyone who's listening, you can just click on the description of this episode and you'll be able to find all that information. Tiffani, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time
Yes.
and your insights with us. It has been so much fun, and I really hope to have you back on the podcast sometime. There's so much more to
Yeah.
talk about.
I would love that. This has been such a joy, Katie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to pause the recording.